Thank you for having us. It's so exciting to be here. Singapore is a nice place, and this church is amazing, and this conference. I mean, I was talking with Wolfgang. We see each other in different academic settings, and we're meeting in a conference in a few weeks in Uppsala. And we said to each other, this is another kind of experience. So thank you for having us. Before I start, just 2 disclaimers. English is not my mother tongue, so excuse me for pronouncing wrongly. And I'm really not an academic. I'm more a kind of pastor, so, but I'll try my best. So the question is, why should we care for the society? Why should we care? When we belong to another kingdom, our home is in another place, and we are longing for that place. Why should we care? That's my main question in this paper. And my personal response to that is that because God cares. The whole creation belongs to God, and He loves the world. The Spirit is God's dynamic presence, breathing life into every creature. And Jesus became one of us in the Incarnation, defeated death through His resurrection, and He's sustaining all things by His powerful word. And as His people, His church, us, our life should be as much as possible in line with God's identity. That's why, because we belong to Him. So for most people, and hopefully especially Christians, it's a natural instinct to help people in need. I remember a discussion in my local church back in Jönköping in Sweden. We had a situation with a lot of refugees coming into Sweden, many of them young boys without parents. And we had the discussion in the church, what do we do? And we opened our facility to host some of these guys. It was more like a spontaneous reaction to the crisis. We didn't have a plan, we just did it. It was spontaneous. And step by step, along the line, our motivation became clearer. We wanted to show love and help these people in this exposed situation. We also wanted to be a constructive partner in building a good society, along with other authorities. And by the time we realized that in this praxis of helping these people, we became a better version of ourselves. In building the kingdom, and by that, we were forced to deeper think through our theology. And it is my conviction that Christians in general and Pentecostals in particular, we need to strengthen the theological foundation for this natural praxis of caring. And this article is an attempt to do so. Christian faith is formed around Jesus. Jesus is the focal point in Christianity. And faith in Pentecostal tradition is even more Christ-centric, with the formulations around the full gospel as an example, where Jesus is the center of the whole theological understanding. Of course, we have these distinctive theological expressions like in pneumatology and eschatology, but when you peel the onion, layer by layer, you will find Jesus all over the place. It's about Jesus. And He is, of course, foundation for our statement, our theology, but is also a lived example and the core of our experience. His incarnational presence is unique, but can although have a functional theological paradigm for a Christian life in this world. So my question is, How can a thoroughly incarnational understanding of Christian faith and life deepen the societal engagement? Jesus' example shows a radical, transgressive presence in this world. Storms were calmed, water turned into wine, sick and dead were healed and resurrected, and in the end, death itself defeated, and man is invited through Jesus' transformative work into a new and more open reality. The same world, but yet another. Same circumstances, but now with new possibilities. God, in his work through Jesus, can be described as a transformation of reality, a transformation that man is invited to share, a transformation that man is challenged to live in and contribute to. So Christian life is, in this sense, transformative, and the Christian presence in society can therefore have a transformative effect. This is even more so in the Pentecostal tradition, where the life of Jesus finds its continuation through the event of Pentecost in what Nimi Variboko calls the Pentecostal principle. And that's my question. How can the Pentecostal principle be lived in this world and the Pentecostal presence be understood and performed as truly transformational? So the aim of this paper is to investigate how Christian presence and engagement in society can be understood as incarnational and transformative. And the focus is on Pentecostalism. And the case is mainly the Swedish Pentecostal movement. Pentecostalism is in many ways a practical and concrete type of Christianity, or embodied experience, as Bretherton says. Faith for Pentecostals is a kind of lived experience. Faith taking concrete form, or in other words, incarnational. On the other hand, Pentecostal, we are eager to see radical change. Salvation for us is about becoming a new creation. Being filled by the Spirit is being filled by power and new possibilities and perspectives. The church, the redeemed church, is an alternative community here in this world. And eschatology is a dream of a coming and new kingdom. So the whole spirituality is about change and development and transformation. Taking this into the Pentecostal life in society, the main question would be, how can a Pentecostal theology of social engagement look like? And in what way can it be described as incarnational transformation? So let's just take a short moment to situate Pentecostalism. Most scholars, they agree in that the beginning of Pentecostalism are multi-faced. We're one because we're Pentecostals, but we're different. So there are many types of Pentecostalism. In one sense, you could not talk about Pentecostalism in singular. It should be plural. And you can see it in the presentations here today or during this conference. And in this article, I will draw on this wide expression of Pentecostalism, but my main material and examples will be taken from the Swedish context. In the book Global Pentecostalism, the authors Miller and Yamamori shows that Pentecostalism, not all group, but still a significant portion, show a strong participation and clear impact into the society and its development. It's about this transformational power and a holistic understanding of the gospel. So the engagement for societal development and common goods turn out to be rooted in the way we look at faith and Christian life. The economic anthropologist Dina Freeman has shown that Pentecostal groups, in her case study in Ethiopia, they were able to demonstrate a more far-reaching and lasting social change precisely because the change was rooted in the theological ideas, in the common morality that were carried by the community, and that both leaders and practitioners shared beliefs, experiences, and common life. The conclusion is therefore, we need to develop a thick ecclesiology and theology for social and societal engagement. So my main argument is that using incarnational terminology is basing this theological understanding foundation in our Christ-centered spirituality, and using transformational language is to connect to the whole spirituality of eagerness for transformation. That's a main. So if you lose everything else, that's the main thing. So Swedish Pentecostalism has from its beginning been characterized by a missionary zeal and a strong social pathos. And I have described this movement and the theological identity of the Swedish Pentecostal movement as experience-based practical Christianity through Jesus-centered missionality. And within this definition, the emphasis on experience and missionality can be characterized as the transformative dimension, while the practical-oriented Jesus-centeredness have an incarnational feature. But before I deepen that discussion about these four different dimensions of the Swedish Pentecostal movement, I would like to say something about the terminology of engagement and briefly discuss that. So I remember a discussion we had at the board of WOPTI, World Alliance for Pentecostal Theological Education. And we discussed the theme and terminology of the next issue of the journal Pentecostal Education. One that you need to apply for or sign up for. It's on the webpage of wopti.org. Wonsak is one of the leading person in this journal. So it's free, so sign up for that. We were discussing the theme. What are we talking about when the gospel, faith, and church meet the world, society, and social needs? Should we use the term social, societal, or community, or maybe civic? We were discussing. And then these terms, they overlap, but they still have slightly different meanings. And then there came the question whether we should talk about awareness, responsibility, engagement, transformation. And for a time in this discussion, it looked like that we should end up in the theme community transformation. But in the end, the theme for the journal became Pentecostal social engagement. In this article, in this presentation, I have chosen the concept societal engagement. I choose societal because I don't want the risk of ending up in an overly introvert individual discussion that could be the effect of using social, that could end up in more individual. I want to have a more societal perspective. And then I choose engagement to make room for the passion based in convictions while emphasizing the personal agency. Within the classical Pentecostalism, there has been periods where an almost sectarian attitude has been cultivated. Actually, the first academic work on the Swedish Pentecostal movement had the subtitle From Apocalyptic Sect to Christian Society, showing the journey in that movement from a kind of sectarian mentality to the ambition to protect what they perceived as Christian society. Amos Young is discussing in his book In the Days of Caesars different dimensions of how Pentecostals relate to the society. talking about Pentecostal sectarianism that want to keep away from the society. Pentecostal conservatism that try to control the society. And Pentecostal progressivism that try to engage in relation and have a more kind of prophetic, using the term, the young term here, prophetic relation. In the choice of terminology to discuss the relation to the society, the term political theology has become increasingly common during the last decades. Many classical Pentecostal groups have strived to be apolitical. I'm a missionary kid. I grew up in Bolivia, South America, and I remember how it was so important to be apolitical. Don't engage in politics. And there were two main arguments for that. One is politics were perceived as worldly and corrupting. And at the strategic level, we didn't want to mess up the relations with the leading powers of the country and maybe get the risk of being thrown out from the country. So don't engage too much. The Belgian sociologist Chantal Mouffe distinguished between political and politics. And she says, politics is about engaging in political parties, elections, and political systems, when political is to work and act in the public sphere for the common good. Using this terminology on Pentecostals, most have avoided to enter to politics, but on the same time, almost everyone has in different degrees and in different matter been political, some unintentionally, some other based on a thoughtful theological position. But being out there, being public, being political in the polis, in the city, in the public sphere. So during the 5, 10, 15 last years, several books have been published dealing with public or political Pentecostalism. So this is the field we're dealing with right now. Now I will turn to unpack the case of the Swedish Pentecostal movement. So I have previously described the Swedish Pentecostal movement as an experience-based practical Christianity through Jesus-centered missionality. And it is my conviction that if the church and its practices and commitment to build a better society are to be sustainable and effective, they must be anchored in an integrated with the theological convictions. So let me unpack this description of the Swedish Pentecostalism before I end in the reflection on the two terms, incarnational and transformation. So the Swedish Pentecostalism as a case show that experience and affection has played a very prominent and still play an important role in forming the theology and spirituality. A Pentecostal epistemology must include practices, experiences, and affections, not as the authority, as Sanna was saying before lunch, but as a part of our understanding of what theology is. The encounter with God and the world and other become for Pentecostal a way of integrating life and faith, heaven and earth, spiritual and material. And this integrative process, experiential theology, plays a significant role in both forming one's own faith and the encounter with the surrounding society. The second dimension, action-oriented practical Christianity, You know, the experience-based emphasis could lead to an inward look for affections and emotion, but that is always balanced with the Pentecostal spirituality with an activist and action-oriented trait. The Swedish Pentecostal pioneers Levi Petrus repeatedly spoke about the need for faith to take concrete expression, and he used the term practical Christianity. So within the Pentecostal movement, there are many forms of inherent entrepreneurship, but perhaps the most clear expression is found in the diaconal or social field, caring for the vulnerable. That has been prominent expression of the faith from the beginning, both in Sweden and in the global mission of the Swedish Pentecostal movement. The practical Christianity has mostly been expressed in a concern for needy people, vulnerable people, and a far-reaching social engagement. Turning to the third dimension, the Christ-centric theology. Jesus is the center of Pentecostal spirituality in the way that interacts with the two preceding traits. The primary experience of this revival-oriented Christianity is conversion. Meet Jesus, believe in Jesus, receive Jesus. That's the foundation of a Pentecostal experience. Then we have many different other aspects, but this is a crucial one. Meet Jesus, believe Jesus, receive Jesus. Jesus is the center. So that's the crucial experience. But it's also the center of the whole picture of the theological conviction in what is called the full gospel, where Jesus stands in the center, surrounded by prominent different theological aspects as Jesus as Savior, sanctifier, healer, coming King, Spirit baptizer, but Jesus in the center. So Jesus is the center of the experience and the theological understanding. But in case of societal engagement, Jesus is also a kind of, he appears as an example. The early Swedish Pentecostals read the Jesus story through the lens of practical Christianity. Jesus descended, so should his followers. Jesus went out, met people in midst of their social situation. So should we. Jesus met vulnerable people. That's the task for the church. We looked at Jesus and we tried to follow him, and he became an example. At the same time, we see that most Pentecostal engagement, especially, I'm talking from a Swedish perspective here. This Christ-centered societal engagement often ends up in the compassion and action for the individual, the needy, but it rarely takes the step into the next dimension, work for more structural changes. And that's maybe my critique to my own movement and to the Pentecostalism as a whole. I'm coming back to that. Turning to the fourth dimension, Pentecostalism in general is a missionally oriented type of Christianity. For Pentecostals, missionality is about the eagerness to spread the gospel. See people come to faith, found vibrant and self-sustaining local churches. But it is also about having a mission, being commissioned, being in motion, having an action. Within the missional identity, the desire to spread the gospel interacts with activism, Christ-centrism, personal experience, and we want to be in the move. I mean, to be personal. My job is to sit on a desk and read books and write papers. That's contrary to my personality. It's contrary to my spirituality. We're on the move. We want to walk. And we need to stay. In order to be, I mean, you understand. So missionality is not only about preaching the gospel, it's also a mentality of activism, of being in the move. Have you seen Pastor Kong entering the stage? Did you realize? He's running. He's not, I mean, that's truly Pentecostal, brother. So this Jesus-centered missionality is about following Jesus, led by the Spirit to the world where God is already present. Societal engagement is not about taking God to the society. Don't bother. I mean, he's already there. But we're joining him in his engagement for society. So when we go to the society, when we engage in societal issues, we are cooperating with God who's already there. So that's an understanding. So discovering in meeting with different religions. The task is to discover where God is moving and how Christ is present already by the Spirit. In meeting with the suffering and vulnerability, it's about, like Jesus, meeting these people where they are and letting the gospel really be the good news, meeting real needs. When I was young, they were writing on the walls, Jesus is the answer, all over. Not all over, but in many places. And in one place, someone had added, but what's the question? You see? Jesus is the answer. Wow, I'm hungry. Jesus is the answer. I have no home. Jesus is the answer. I'm oppressed. What's the good news in this? In meeting social and societal dimensions, we need to form. Thank you. And also, in encountering unjust structures, we can maybe contribute with some liberation and redress for individuals in seeing societal change from below. So, I don't know where I'm at. I have another picture here, but that doesn't matter. Turning into, so in what way could Pentecostal societal engagement be understood as incarnational transformation? Let me first address the question if, and then end with some reflections on how. So societal engagement as incarnational transformation is connected to the identity, as I have shown, to describe Pentecostalism as Christ-centric, practical, embodied experience. For most Pentecostals, faith is a personal inner reality that takes form in real life, in visible change, in concrete utterance. Pentecostal faith need to be manifested and concrete and embodied. It's not just an idea, it's life, it's concrete, it's taking form. So incarnation means that the divine become material. God himself become human without abolishing or erasing the original identity. This is important. Incarnation is not being something else, but in another form. So, in the modern study of religion, we can see what have been called a material turn. One of the major sociological perspective in this is the actor network theory formulated by Bruno Latour, where the actor is seen as embedded in the context of networking factors. It's an emphasis on actorship in context. And in a Pentecostal context, this fits into the image of faith manifested in practical Christianity. It takes concrete form in the society where the person and the congregation are situated. All this can be understood as incarnational in the meaning that the spiritual and otherworldly experience and presence is taking form in a concrete reality of the everyday life of the church and believer. Regarding societal engagement, this is seen as an offspring of divine love experienced by the believer. God's love took form in practical and concrete action in the incarnation. And in a similar way, practical Christianity can be seen as the incarnation of love and divine presence. This is both spiritual and material, both divine and human in the enchanted world of Pentecostal reality. And Pentecostal expression is based in radical and personal experience, as we have seen. God's grace is seen as the active element in the believer, forming change and transforming heart. And this transforming power is for life and witness and to bringing the kingdom into existence in this world. So Pentecostalism has an embedded transformative vision of life and existence. Divine presence in the ordinary life can be described as transformational. The Spirit was hovering over chaos, turned it into cosmos. Christ entered into death and darkness, turned it into resurrection. At the day of Pentecost, ordinary disciples used their bodily organs to speak foreign languages that were familiar to other people present. This kind of transformation combines different elements. There's a connection between the before and after in transformation. In his transfiguration, Jesus is all new, but still recognized, both new and the same. The transformation is about divine presence and agency, but not without human involvement. Transformation is not built on hard work, but on God's active, dynamic presence, forming something new within and through the existing. Transformation is also lasting and not just a moment of heavenly life. It brings forth new dimensions, transcending the limitations of ordinary life, shaping the ordinary human life with extraordinary, you understand? Extraordinary divine possibility. It's both personal and communal. And it is truly political in the sense that it is seen, visible, concrete, public. But for most Pentecostals, the starting point of this transformation is from within. So the transformation for societal transformation starts with personal transformation of heart. And from that personal transformation, the rings on the water changes society from within. This inward focus is both a strength and a weakness. Pentecostal societal engagement in this Pentecostal societal engagement. The strength is shown by scholars like Freeman and Brusco, where transformation is founded in personal identity, value system, and embedded in praxis. But the weakness is that unjust structures and political limitations are hard to change through the life of individuals. So we need to combine the inward and the external dimension of this. So it is obvious that the incarnational transformative dimension fit together in this understanding of Christian faith, in both focusing the practical presence and radical transformative change in both personal life and societal engagement. So I'm jumping to my end here, I'm sorry. I was leaning on the professor Dr. Land in my understanding, where we were trying to separate different dimensions. He asked us as students, is it this or is it that? And the answer is yes. Are you with me? Trying to hold together things that we normally put apart. We are a little bit black and white. Church and society, we separate. And I would argue for more of integration. In our cosmology, spiritual and material dimensions are intertwined. Soteriology is a holistic salvation for both soul and body. And in our ecclesiology, we understand the church as God's presence in the world. The Spirit is enchanting every part of the creation, and our experience of the Spirit become an integrating center. So we can start to confess, pray, and act for His kingdom to come. The way of doing this is the integrating combination of crisis process, where the ongoing work of practical Christianity is interrupted by the inbreaking of divine presence. In this way, Pentecostal societal engagement can be understood and performed as truly incarnational and transformation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Ulrik. Thank you, Dr. Doug, Dr. Byron, to Pastor Kong and Sister Sad, and to all of you. Let me start this response to Dr. Ulrik with a story. It is a story about 3 religious leaders who attended a conference here in Singapore. And the first religious leader said, "Oh my, graft and corruption is so bad in our country. We do it under the table," he said. And so he asked this another religious leader, and he said, "How about in Indonesia?" And he said, "I think it's more worse in Indonesia because we do it over the table," he said. And they asked this Filipino bishop from the Philippines, and they said, "How about in the Philippines?" "Well, in the Philippines, we take even the table," he said. I was in American Samoa in 2019 and taught 30 students. So big, fat, and heavyweight. And I told them, "How about here in American Samoa? How do you do graft and corruption here?" And my students said, "Can you not see? Can you? We eat even the table," he said. Unlike these religious leaders, ladies and gentlemen, they are trying to identify the problems in the society. But the paper that Dr. Ulrik has shared to us, let me just make a sketch and to simplify to you this very, very important paper that he presented to us. This paper that he presented to us show us why societal engagement matters for Pentecostals. And it also tells us who we are as people of the Spirit, and what contributions we can make to our society, our broken society. And the most beautiful thing that Dr. Ulrik has shared to us are the two pathways that are so faithful to the biblical traditions on how we translate that into action, ladies and gentlemen. So why societal engagement matters? He asserted in his paper that the God that we serve, the God of the whole creation, was involved in the very affairs of the whole created order, breathing, identifying, and sustaining the whole creations. But he said that Pentecostals are confronted with societal issues that require us to be responsible, to be incarnational and transformative in our action towards society. He mentioned that caring for the most vulnerable ones in our society is not only a collaborative effort of government and civil society like churches, ladies and gentlemen, but it is indeed the very heart of the mission of the kingdom of God. We Pentecostals can be a positive force that can create positive image in the society. These are the emerging rationalizations that I have discovered in his paper, ladies and gentlemen. And when it comes to who we are as people, he made a very positive appraisal about Pentecostal, that Pentecostal was formed and shaped by their understanding of Jesus' incarnations and transformative action on earth. Jesus' incarnation is the foundation of our theology, but also a live example of how we live our faith and the very core of our experiences. Jesus, according to Dr. Ulrik, is radical, aggressive, and transformative when it comes to confronting social reality. However, Jesus' way of transforming our social reality can not only be mediated by his power alone, but he invites human beings, especially his children, to join and partner with God in this incarnational and transformative action in our broken world. For Dr. Ulrik, the Pentecostal movement is the most concrete, entrepreneurial, and practical type of religion that can affect genuine transformation in society. Due to their Christ-centric theology, pneumatological experience, and eschatological expectations. Using Swedish Pentecostalism as a case study, he underscored the four theological framework of societal engagement in Sweden, and that is experiences and affections, action-oriented practical Christianity, the Christ-centric theology, and missional-oriented type of Christianity. And he proposes, ladies and gentlemen, in his paper, two pathways for us to translate societal engagement. And that is incarnational and transformative. Pentecostals' societal engagement must be expressed as incarnational transformations. Pentecostal faith needs not to be privately practiced, but must be something that we should live out in public. By incarnation, he meant that the divine becomes material, the invisible becomes visible, the concrete expressions between the transcendence and the immanence of God, the interplay of theology and praxis, all expressed in divine love by Spirit-filled believers. I'm a storyteller in the Philippines, and so let me give you another story. One day, Harry, the driver of Albert Einstein, approached Albert Einstein and he said, Professor Einstein, now that you are invited at Brown University, is it possible that at this time I will act as an Albert Einstein and you will act as my driver? And both of them agreed, ladies and gentlemen. So they haven't seen Albert Einstein at Brown University. So when the MC called the Albert Einstein, Harry went to the podium and presented a lecture on the theory of relativity. And all the people who were attending that conference were so amazed by the intelligence of Harry. But there were two students at the back who were competing. And this student said, if I will just ask this question to Albert Einstein, he will not answer these questions. And so they let this student ask that questions. And Harry, instead of panicking, he said, you know, I've been to different conferences, and your question is the easiest question that I ever encountered in life, that even my driver at the back can answer that question. And so he said, let me call my driver and answer your questions. When I learned about this story, I was contemplating and I was thinking about the meaning of katartizo. Dr. Ulrik said about our approach to societal engagement as an incarnational. And the question that I wrestled from this story is that what made Harry think, speak, behave, and act like an Albert Einstein? You know the answer, ladies and gentlemen? It was found in Luke chapter 6, verse 40. Jesus said, the students are not above his teacher. But when a pupil is fully trained, then he will act like his teacher. I think this is the heart of what Dr. Ulrik is saying to us. We are the very practical expression of Jesus Christ in our society. We are the katartizo. And so everything we say and do, it should be a practical expression of Jesus Christ in our society. But he also said that this societal engagement, ladies and gentlemen, should be transformative. It should change people. It should change us, and it should change the systemic and structural evil in our society. The strength of this paper, ladies and gentlemen, is not a small thing, but it invites us deeper to understand what we should think as Pentecostals about our theology of societal engagement. This paper inform and acquaint us with the growing literature of Pentecostal scholars dealing with Pentecostal societal engagement that could be used by us as new breed of Pentecostal scholars and researchers to frame and do grounding theology for societal engagement. I want you to read this paper, ladies and gentlemen. But it shows us the inherent theology of the incarnational transformation developed by Swedish Pentecostals. I believe that this article will immensely add to the library of knowledge created and written by Pentecostal scholars in the past and present. But let me give you also a good news. The concept of societal engagement is not just a new grammar of faith being used by the church or religious institutions like the Pentecostal movement. But it is a new sociological theory popularized by prominent social scientists like Perry Bordeo, James Kuhlman, Francis Fukuyama, and Robert Putnam of Harvard University. I want to quote my professor and my supervisor Dr. Doug Peterson was the one who influenced me in 2009 to investigate the concept and theory of civic engagement here in Asia. And based from the concepts and ideas of these social scientists, religious and non-religious organizations that are socially engaged and connected have greater political voices in the society. They can convert that civic engagement for the economic well-being. They enforce positive values and will become happier and healthier people in the community. So I hope that our new breed of scholars will consider investigating the concept of societal engagement or civic engagement or community engagement in our respective communities. There is no doubt, ladies and gentlemen, that the doctrine of incarnation provides a theological template to guide our action. But to establish further the theological link that the church, the body of Christ, is the continuing incarnation of Jesus in our society, I believe that it should be emphasized on or clarified. When we come to the biblical data, the scripture tells us that Jesus is the light, we are also the light. When it comes to the concept of word, Jesus is the Logos, we are also the living letters. When it comes to Missio Dei, Jesus was sent by the Father and he sent us all. There are many, many conceptual themes of incarnational theology in the Bible that should be explored, ladies and gentlemen. Another suggestions, these are just my humble suggestions. Number 3 is that the task of providing qualitative and empirical evidences should be provided to show us that societal engagement that is incarnational and transformative is functional and operational among Pentecostal churches in Sweden or Europe or elsewhere. Of course, the question of Dr. Ulrik is about the conceptual framework of what Pentecostals should think about social engagement. And so this burden lies to our new breed of Pentecostal researchers in Asia. Another one is that Pentecostal societal engagement, I believe, can be more pronounced, incarnational and transformative when Pentecostal thinkers in Sweden or in Europe or in Asia can become prophetic by increasingly making themselves visible in public dialogues and debate in the public square. I've been to 28 universities in the whole world, and I saw an acute need of Pentecostal apologeticians that participate in public dialogues and debate in the public square. And so that's my suggestions, and thank you very much, and God bless you.
Thank you, Joel. I didn't know you were so funny. Dr. Ulrik.
I'm sorry, I don't have that kind of stories that you had, so I'm not that funny. Just some few remarks. I really think it's important to dig around the why. Sometimes we talk about the golden circle with how, what, and why. And it's easy to elaborate around how. Should we have green or red light? Or should we have carpet or something else on the floor? Or how do we do things? And then we need to discuss what. Should we do this and do that? The crucial thing is why. That is the driving force in all this. So thank you for lifting that. I could do more of that in the paper. So my main purpose is to dig around, why do we do this? Why is this important? And I think that for sometimes we have neglected that dimension in our societal dimension. Thank you also for lifting the ecclesiological perspective on this. This is not a one-man show. This is not for individuals. This is for us as a community to dig around why we're engaging and what that mean. So forming a community of societal engagement. As I said in our local church back in Jönköping, it was a church that opened the facilities. That was built on personal engagement from different people, but it was a communal. It was us doing that. So the combination of, is it me or is it us? And the answer is yes. And is it us or is it God? And the answer is yes. To bring these dimensions together in a more thoroughly discussion, I need to elaborate on that. And also, thank you for bringing up Putman and the social capital. This social theory of social capital, prominent today, is so important. And it is used for individual purposes to raise the level of society. And for us, we need to form a social capital so that we can engage in societal engagement. But by using our social capital in the society, we're not promoting our church. We're not promoting just a better life. We're promoting the kingdom of God. And that's another level of using our social capital. Thank you for that. And lastly, about empirical research, there are a lot of that. Just to mention one, I just briefly mentioned the book Global Pentecostalism. I think it's so amazing. This was two sociologists in a secular university. And they wrote to a bunch of missiologists around the world, and they wanted to discuss the church, social, societal engagement around the globe. And they got responses from all these different missiologists. And the answer was that around 80% of these answers were pointing to different Pentecostal groups that they needed to include. So they just decided, we're not doing a work on Christianity in society. We need to discuss Pentecostalism in society. And there are many, many empirical work done on the effectiveness and the importance of Pentecostals playing a role in the society. Actually, in 2 weeks, we're having a conference in Uppsala on Pentecostalism in peace and conflict. I mean, you know, this world is torn apart by conflicts. Internal, in countries, between people, between countries. We can play a role in bringing peace to this world. And we need to dive into that dimension. And for that, we need to have a deep theology of what does it mean to be reconciled. It's not about just my soul. It's my soul as well, but not just. God is interested in reconciling the world. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, Dr. Ulrik. I am Helen. I am currently pursuing my Master's in Arts in Leadership in Vanguard University. Doctor, before I state my question, I would like to say that I really love all the learnings that I have from your paper. It's really thought-provoking and very inspiring at the same time. Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you.
This is my question. Can you give us some practical examples on how incarnational transformation has been lived out in the societal engagement of the Swedish Pentecostal movement?
Thank you. Yeah, there are many examples. I mean, the first leader of the Swedish Pentecostal movement, he was a really entrepreneurial one. So when his book was refused, he started a publishing house. When he didn't like the paper, he started a newspaper. When the Swedish radio refused Pentecostals to broadcast in radio, he started the first private radio in Sweden. So this is a kind of mentality that he implied into the mentality of the Swedish Pentecostal movement. But when we talk about incarnational transformation, I think it's important to understand that you need to be embedded in the situation where you want to bring transformation. You're not standing out. God didn't sit in his heaven and say, I want to reconcile the world. He came here. So in order to be incarnational in the transformational work, it's about being embedded. So one example is we have a big problem with gang criminals in Sweden. Big problem. And lastly, we've seen some examples of people not involving in gang criminals, but involving in these situations and being embedded and receive Christ. And out of that, they have started to gain respect in these groups. So now we're starting a very effective exile project for gang criminals to leave criminality and being part of the society. That is one example of that. But that includes the courage to be embedded, the courage to leave heaven to come to the earth, to leave the church pews to be embedded in the world. So, thank you.
Wow, thank you so much,
Thank you,
Doctor.
Helen. Thank you, Helen.
Hi, Dr. Ulrik. So my name is Eng Wee. I have graduated from Vanguard University with a Master's of Arts in Leadership. So thank you so much for your sharing. I really enjoyed it, and it really exemplified what we believe as a church to engage society. I have a question for you. What are your thoughts on the global trends of some Pentecostal groups becoming politicized, such as some American Pentecostals moving towards right-wing populism? And with that, what are some responses that you might have or would suggest that we can align this Pentecostal societal engagement with the incarnation transformation that you have conceptualized? Thank you.
Wow. Do you expect me to answer that, or? Thank you for the question. No, to be honest, I don't like the church to be politicized. That's my position. And as I referred to in my presentation in the paper, Chantal Mouffe is making a clear distinction between politics and political. And I really think that we need to understand that the church has to be political, in the sense that we live in the public sphere, we take part in the society, and we need to engage in the society. I don't think that we in so many cases should be into politics, and especially not politicize. I don't like when preachers say vote like this and vote like that. I don't like that.
Thank you.
But I really think that we need to engage in political, in the sense that we take part of the society. And sometimes we need to raise a prophetic voice unto unjust structures, and being political even in that sense. So thank you very much for the question. A little bit tricky, but
question, without getting us in trouble.
Yeah.
Next question.
Hi, Doctor. I'm Joyce. I hold a PhD in management, a major in criminology, and a master's in social science counseling from the University of Canberra. Yeah. So my question for you today is, in parts of Asia, when challenging the status quo can invite social, cultural, and political backlash, What practical steps can Pentecostal communities take to move beyond individual transformation and engage meaningfully with systemic injustices and structural change?
Thank you. Dear Joyce, how do you expect me to answer questions about Asia? What do you think yourself?
Wow. That's a very good one.
Now, you don't need to, but I'm really interested in what you think.
I think it's like what exactly you say, that we need to be embedded into the system. And that's exactly what I did from the last 11 years of my life. I grew up in City Harvest, and that is something that Pastor always talk about. Cultural mandate, going into the missions, going into the systems. And I started in full-time ministry. I was in Bible school 20 years ago. And when I started in Bible school, I wanted to just serve God full-time, which I did for 14 years of my life. And then God said, no, it's time to move. And then I said, where? And I said, how? Like how you did? And he said, I will open the door and you just walk in. And I did for the last 11 years of my life.
Thank you, Joyce, for that. I mean, engage, interact, and be in partner. And as Paul says to the Thessalonians, your testimony has been all over and we don't need to say anything. So thank you, Joyce.
Thank you.
We have time for another question.
Hi, Doctor. My name is Chen Ing, and I'm pursuing a Master's of Arts in Leadership Studies at Vanguard University. Now, my question for you today, Doctor, is Pentecostalism has always put an emphasis on the material expressions of faith. Doctor, how do you reconcile the emphasis with the risk of Pentecostals becoming overly focused on exterior works, potentially at the expense of our interior spirituality and transformation?
That's a tricky one. I mean, I could, do like this and do like that. And life is not that easy. So this is a tricky one. We need to be engaged without losing ourselves. That's the meaning of incarnation. Jesus came and he became human. I mean, flesh. He needed to sleep, he needed to eat, everything. He was a human, fully human. But without losing anything of his divine nature. So that's the meaning of incarnational dimension when we engage in society. It's not becoming one of them. Residents, aliens from the morning. We belong here, we're human. You're from Singapore, I'm from Sweden. We have our different contexts. We engage in our social, but we still have to foster our identity. If we lose our identity, what should we bring then? We don't have anything to bring if we lose that. So it's not either or, it's both and. Is it that and that? Yes. I'm sorry, that's not a good answer.
That's wonderful, Doctor. That's wonderful. Thank you, Doctor, for your answer.
Thank you.
We have 3 minutes left, so let's have one more question.
Hi, Doctor. My name is Gwendolyn, and I'm currently pursuing my Master's of Arts in Theology with our School of Theology. This is my question. Your paper draws from Swedish Pentecostal context, where public expressions of Christianity are more accepted. But in pluralistic Asian societies, where there are greater sensitivities and stricter regulations on religious expression, in your opinion, how can Asian Pentecostals live out a theology of incarnational transformation that still allow for bold and faithful gospel witness in our communities?
Thank you so much, Gwendolyn.
Yeah.
Let me just shortly correct you. I mean, Sweden has been a Christian country for 1,000 years. It has been a Protestant country for 500 years. Pentecostalism has been very strong in one part of the 20th century. Sweden was the most Pentecostalized country in the world. It's not that anymore. And it's not that open. For example, an academic conference like this wouldn't happen in Sweden. No, I mean, we're not integrating that much as you are. So, and for example, there are strict regulations for us what we can say and not say in HTBLQ extra things and other things. So it's not that open. What I think you have in advantage is that you live in a culture that is religious, very religious. And you can engage based on your religious convictions into a society where all people are religious, not all Christians, no, and there might be restrictions, but all are or almost all are religious in some way. And that's a very, very good thing, good starting point to find a common ground in a higher meaning of life and so on. So I think that we can teach you some things from the Swedish perspective, but I really think that you, from your perspective, have a lot to teach to us. So being here, being together, learning from each other, that's the way. The church is one. Christ is one. The gospel is one. The contexts are different, but we need to learn from each other. So thank you for putting that question.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you.